What if I told you that Africa's future is no longer in the hands of the West? Today, one leader is breaking free from centuries of control and sending shockwaves around the world. But here's the real question. Is Africa truly ready to stand on its own? Or is this just a dangerous gamble that could send everything spiraling out of control? The twist? Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso is not asking for permission. He's not waiting for handouts, and he's not just talking about independence, he's living it. Hey everyone, welcome to Africa Daily Good News, where we dive deep into Africa's untold stories. The good, the bad, and everything in between. If you're tuning in from the US, Africa, or anywhere in between, know that this message is meant for you. Before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Have you ever thought about what real independence looks like? Drop a comment below, let me know where you're watching from, and share your thoughts, because this conversation isn't just about Africa, it's about the world we're all living in. We're not just bringing you the news, we're giving you the story behind the story. If you're passionate about uncovering the truth and seeing things from a new perspective, hit that subscribe button and join the Africa Daily Good News family. Now, let's jump into what's happening in Burkina Faso and why this move is changing the game for Africa and the world. Stay tuned. For decades, Burkina Faso was seen as just another impoverished African country, caught in the endless cycle of foreign interference, aid, and dependency. But then, something changed. Something that no one could have predicted. Ibrahim Traoré, the country's young leader, made a move so bold that it shocked not only Africa but the entire world. He took a stand. He expelled the French military, and in one fell swoop he declared that Burkina Faso would no longer bend to outside control. But here's the catch. While the world watched in disbelief, the real question remained. Was this just an act of defiance, or is this the start of something much larger? If it were any other country, we'd be looking at a crisis, but Traoré wasn't just making a political statement. He was rewriting the rules. He wasn't waiting for permission. He wasn't asking for sympathy. He was setting the stage for a revolution. Now, consider this. For centuries, Africa has been portrayed as weak, struggling to stand on its own. The narrative was always about the need for Western intervention, the need for aid. But what if that's not the reality anymore? What if the real problem is not the lack of resources, but the continued exploitation of those resources by foreign powers? Traoré's actions suggest just that. In rejecting foreign military presence, he's showing that Africa doesn't need to be saved. It needs to take back control. Think about it. How many times have you heard the phrase, Africa can't succeed without the West? It's almost like a broken record. Yet here's Burkina Faso, one of the poorest nations, turning that narrative on its head. What happens when a nation decides to rise above the system? Can the world ignore this shift? Now imagine this shift taking root across the continent. What if this movement isn't just about Burkina Faso? What if it's the spark that ignites a larger fire, the fire of self-reliance across Africa? But that's the question we need to explore. Can these bold moves truly lead to lasting change, or will they crumble under pressure? And more importantly, what's next for Traoré as he navigates this delicate balance between defying the West and securing his country's future? Just when the world thought it was safe to label Africa as underdeveloped, Ibrahim Traoré turned the table. While Western powers, led by France, have had their hands in Africa's pot for centuries, Burkina Faso, a country with little to its name, has made one of the boldest moves in African history. But here's the twist. This move isn't just a political statement. It's a direct challenge to the power dynamics that have held Africa in check for generations. You see, for years, the world has been fed the idea that Africa cannot succeed without foreign assistance. The narrative has been set. Africa needs the West. But in Burkina Faso, they've turned that narrative upside down. No more aid, no more dependency. What happens when a nation, once labeled as poor and dependent, decides to stop asking for help and starts taking what's rightfully theirs? And yet, this wasn't a quick decision. It wasn't born from one single event. It was years of frustration, years of watching resources drain away to foreign hands while the people of Burkina Faso suffered. Traoré watched as gold, a symbol of wealth, was extracted from his country by corporations that left nothing behind for his people. Now, he's saying enough. Nationalizing the gold mines wasn't just an economic move, it was a declaration of independence. Think about it. If other nations can control their own wealth, why can't Africa? But the real twist here is this. In rejecting Western control, Traoré has sparked something bigger than just Burkina Faso's economy. What happens when an entire region of Africa, one by one, decides to reclaim their sovereignty? Will the West continue to cling to the idea that Africa needs their help, or will they have no choice but to accept that Africa is finally standing on its own 2 feet? This isn't just about Burkina Faso anymore. It's about the message Traoré is sending to the world. Africa is not a playground for foreign powers. It's not a charity case, nor a continent to be exploited. The question isn't whether the world is ready for this change. It's whether the Western powers can accept it. Now, here's where things get really interesting. If other African nations follow Burkina Faso's lead, what's next? Will they create a new kind of economic bloc, one that doesn't rely on Western money or policies? Can Africa truly sustain itself without the old dependencies? The answers to these questions will shape the future of the continent. In the coming days, the world will be forced to reckon with the new Africa, one that no longer bows down, one that demands respect, not aid, one that shows its people and the world that it is capable of thriving on its own. But the challenge for Traoré and his fellow leaders is just beginning. As they forge ahead, they will have to face those who profit from Africa's weakness, those who fear what's coming next. What happens when a nation, once crippled by poverty, suddenly shows the world that it can stand on its own? Burkina Faso is proving that it's possible. While the world predicted chaos and collapse after Ibrahim Traoré's drastic moves, the country is thriving. The GDP growth, once stagnant, is now rising faster than many nations in Africa, all without Western aid. This is no accident. This is the power of self-reliance. But here's where the story gets complicated. While Traoré's actions have brought newfound confidence to his people, they've also stirred up fierce opposition. Western powers that once held influence are now questioning if they should act. The same systems that benefited from Africa's weakness are suddenly seeing cracks in their control. And this isn't just about Burkina Faso. This is a signal to the entire continent that the old guard is no longer in charge. Now, imagine this. If Africa, as a collective, decided to push back, to reclaim its resources, its land, its dignity, what would that look like? Could Africa finally move beyond being the world's charity case? Could the continent shift the balance of power in the global economy? If it's happening in Burkina Faso, what's to stop it from spreading? Here's the catch. History shows that whenever African nations have tried to break free, there's been a cost. Leaders who challenge the status quo often face consequences, from assassination to economic sabotage. Think about it. Patrice Lumumba, Thomas Sankara, Muammar Gaddafi. These men dared to imagine a different Africa, and their efforts were crushed. But this time, there's something different. The world is watching, and Burkina Faso is setting an example. It's hard to ignore the change when you see it happening before your eyes. People in Burkina Faso, once stuck in the cycle of foreign dependence, are now feeling the pride of being masters of their own destiny. But as the world begins to change, so too does the narrative. The question is, what comes next for Africa? Traoré's revolution isn't just about breaking free from foreign control. It's about rethinking what Africa's role should be on the world stage. Is Africa a place to be pitied and exploited? Or is it a place of power, innovation, and self-determination? The world is watching, and soon, it might just have to answer that question. Burkina Faso has now crossed a line that many thought was unthinkable. The challenge to foreign control over Africa's resources and military presence isn't just a political shift. It's a tectonic shift in the power balance. Yet here's the paradox. As the continent begins to take its destiny into its own hands, the world has to reckon with the uncomfortable truth that Africa doesn't need the West as much as the West has relied on Africa. While most would have expected a country like Burkina Faso to crumble under the weight of Western sanctions, something extraordinary is happening. The economy is growing, infrastructure is improving, and the people are starting to believe again. But then, why is it that Africa, often seen as the poor continent, has the ability to turn its own future around when the West has its own problems to face. Could it be that the West has long been blind to the true potential of Africa? Let's pause and think. Imagine if every African nation adopted this mindset. What if they all decided to reclaim their resources, their wealth, their autonomy? What would happen if Africa, once the world's charity case, became its own economic powerhouse? The idea might sound radical, but Burkina Faso is showing it's possible, without aid, without foreign intervention, and without compromise. But here's where it gets complicated. As more African nations start to question the old system, will there be consequences? History shows us that when leaders challenge the status quo, they often find themselves at odds with the very forces that built their power. It's not just about making bold moves, it's about surviving them. Yet, unlike the leaders before him, Traoré has the momentum of a continent awakening, not just Burkina Faso standing alone. This isn't just an economic story. It's a social and psychological revolution. People who once felt powerless now feel empowered. For the first time in generations, African nations are beginning to see themselves as equal players on the global stage. But as the power balance shifts, the bigger question looms. How long can this momentum last? Can Africa sustain this newfound power without falling into the same traps that have held it back for centuries? In the end, what happens in Burkina Faso will send ripples across the continent. It's not just about one man or one country anymore. It's about an entire continent deciding that enough is enough. It's about Africa's moment of self-determination, and the world, for the first time, might just have to adjust to a new reality. Africa is at a crossroads. What happens next could either solidify a new era of self-reliance or plunge the continent back into the shadows of dependency. Ibrahim Traoré's bold moves are not just a story about one country. They're a reflection of the shift happening across the continent. Burkina Faso is proving that Africa doesn't need the West's handouts to succeed. But what happens when the world's most powerful countries begin to feel the weight of losing control? For decades, Africa was told it couldn't survive without external help. Now, Traoré is showing the world just how wrong that narrative is. His actions, bold as they are part of something larger, a message that is resonating from Mali to Niger and across the entire Sahel region. The question is, will the rest of Africa follow? Will they stand with Burkina Faso, or will they continue down the path of foreign aid, waiting for someone else to dictate their future? It's impossible to ignore the change that's happening, but here's the twist. The real challenge lies in what happens next. Can this wave of self-determination survive the inevitable pushback from powerful external forces? We've seen how history has played out before. When nations challenge the established order, there's always a price to pay. And yet, the potential for Africa to take control of its own destiny has never been more tangible. This moment is not just about politics. It's about the chance for a people, for an entire continent, to break free from the chains of centuries-old systems of exploitation. But as always, the question remains, what are the costs of true freedom? What are we willing to sacrifice for it? The journey to freedom is never easy, but the road ahead for Africa, a road paved with pride, defiance, and a willingness to stand up for itself, is one that will define generations to come. The question is, are we ready to walk it?